All right, so we're going to start right off where we picked up from the last time. And if you go back and look at the previous video, if you remember, we had just gotten to the point to where we figured out that there were definitely interesting communications between 177 and 131. And we saw some ARP traffic, that 177 appeared to be involved in. We saw some redirects there. And one of the other things we found is that it seemed that Facebook was resolving to the 177 address. So definitely some weird stuff with 177. And we kind of came to the conclusion that it may be a client-side attack because it appears that every connection that we saw between 177 and 131 appeared to be initiated by 131. Okay, so we got into that point in the last session. And one of the things that we found out is the traffic between these two was primarily ICMP traffic, and then there was also TCP traffic on ports 80, 8080, and 443. So in this session, we're going to just break that down and see what we can find with the traffic with those three ports. And we'll start with port 80 and just expanding on the filters that I taught you in the previous session. We're just going to add a port filter because I only want to see traffic between these two and only traffic related to port 80, to or from port 80. So if we apply that filter, you can see it's a valid filter and it breaks the traffic down even further, to where we can see, just traffic between those ports. So what ends up happening is we can now clearly see that there was some significant traffic to port 80, and we can actually right click on one of these packets here and follow TCP stream, and we can kind of see what the traffic looked like, and it kind of verifies for us that, okay, definitely 131 thought that 177 was Facebook because, that's what the referrer is, and you can see the actual traffic there. So that's what happened apparently on port 80. All right. And there's probably a redirect at some point, but let's go back and look at our filters. So we did port 80. Let's go ahead and do port 8080 because we saw that traffic previously as well. And we can see that gives us, even some more interesting information there. So if we start looking at that traffic, there's our first connection there to port 8080. So let's look at that one first. All right, we can see that there's just a connection there. There's a OK. There's what appears to be a Java app there, a .jar file. It's got an exploit.class associated with it. So that, that gives us some things to go back and search for further once we dig a lot deeper into this. All right, let's go back and pop our filter again. So if we go ahead and look down, there's the exploit.jar. If we follow stream there, we can see that there's a get for it, and we can see that it actually came down. And now we start to see some interesting things in this stream. There are some keywords there that should be familiar to you if you've been in pen testing, involved in pen testing, any type of ethical hacking. You should know what Metasploit is, and you can clearly see that show up there. Now what that tells me is that this is probably some malicious payload generated by Metasploit perhaps. We don't know that conclusively, but it's just kind of looking like that. All right. Now we're going to try to see what this thing does and what it is, but let's continue on because what we're going to do in the next video after this one is we're actually going to carve that binary or that .jar file out of the traffic, reconstruct it, and see what it actually is and what it does. And you can see there's a get for it again there. And it's just a process of getting it down. That's what's happening here. All right. So that ends the 8080 traffic, and we want to then look at the 443 traffic and see what we can find interesting there. So I just changed my port to 443 because, again, that's another port that we saw between these two. All right. And if we look at it, if we start at the beginning and follow stream there, we're going to see something even more damning to it for the traffic there. And we can clearly see that, there's some communications going on. were the actual commands. Now this tells us a couple things. Number one, first of all, the attacker is probably not that concerned about stealth, maybe not that great of an attacker, because for one, they're using clear text. You know, the command shell is just clear text here. It's not interpreter. It's not encrypted or anything like that. So this tells us that it may not be that advanced of an adversary, but we can clearly see commands that were typed in that traffic session there. And we can see some files that were modified or accessed. We can see where, you know, a username KLE, which may or may not be my initials, was created there. And we can clearly see that that user was added to the administrator group and a few other things. You know, there's this HR data directory that the attacker found. Looks like he did a directory command, probably saw HR data and then went into HR data and found this HR backup data file and appears to have copied that, you know, to this location to maybe get to it remotely. You know, who knows? We'll figure these things out as we go, but we can see conclusively that these things happen, and then he copied it to C users. Okay, so we know for a fact that these things happen. And that's just from looking at that little bit of traffic. And the way we got here, the reason we knew to focus on these areas is all because of the stuff that we found in Zeek, which allowed us to narrow our focus down onto these interesting things here. So that's it for this video. I want you to take this, see if you can recreate what I just did here, and practice those, just this little nugget of skill, practice it, get it under your belt. And then, you know, you'll grow with it and be able to do other things. So in the next video, we'll dig deeper with Wireshark from the same traffic here. And we're going to be able to extract the .jar file and kind of bust that thing open and see what it is. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments, share the video with whoever you want, and I appreciate you watching.